Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Coburn for a presentation.
Let me read this for the Employee of the Month for January of 2019, who is Derek Tatum, and that probably is a name that everybody's familiar with. Derek began working for the city of Muskogee in April of 2015. Derek works in environmental control and operates a tractor and a 15-foot brush hog, I'm assuming is the way this should read, and keeps our highways and main roadway medians clean. Derek enjoys the people that he works with. In his free time, Derek watches his kids play sports. His son Ryder, who is 10, plays football, basketball, and baseball, and daughter Langston, 7, is a cheerleader at Hilldale. Derek and his wife Melissa are always on the move with one of the kids' sporting events. Derek is described as a self-starter who shows dependability and proficiency in his duties. He volunteers for overtime anytime an emergency arises. He is popular amongst his co-workers, thereby promoting a pleasant working environment. Congratulations to this award to Derek Tatum. Derek's father was our fire chief, now retired. So many of you probably would know him and his father as well. So congratulations, Derek Tatum, on January 2019 Employee of the Month. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Item number 1.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of December 3rd, 2018.
Everybody get a chance to look at the minutes?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Number 2.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments November 29th, 2018 through January 2nd, 2019.
Finance Committee?
Yeah, the Finance Committee did have an opportunity to meet this afternoon, and I do appreciate again the staff giving us the information that was needed. I would recommend approval of the minutes of the purchase of claims.
Second that.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Number 3. Oh, motion passed. Number 3.
Consider approval of an amendment to the contract with Kansas City Aerosports to supply ballooning activities for the proposed 2019 Oklahoma Festival of Ballooning, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Wilkerson?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, Kansas City Aerosports is the company that we've contracted with last year for our balloon festival. He's provided us with an addendum to the contract. Basically, it's to reduce the amount of money that we're going to pay him. So we kind of negotiated that now that he's done it once for us, he can reduce that fee. So this basically is to reduce the fee from $22,500 to $20,000. This management fee to provide the services.
Any questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Number 4.
Consider approval of Amendment Number 1 for additional design services with Planning Design Group for the Civitan Park Improvements Project as recommended by staff, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Wilkerson?
Committee members, Planning Design Group is under contract. We entered into contract with the Planning Design Group to do the Civitan Park project. And we discovered that we were going to have to provide some additional services. We had assumed that we could use the architectural design from the restrooms that we built in past years at Robinson Park and at Honor Heights Park. But that turned out to not be the case. So we had to provide the new architectural services. For the PDG has a architect on team, provided us a very good fee of that $5,000. So this addendum is to increase their contract by $5,000, but basically that's to provide those architectural services for the project. it's within our budget. The overall scope of the project will be included.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more questions?
Will this additional cost be covered by the grant?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Dan Hall,
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Number 5.
Consider approval of lowest bid from Rarick Pacific Company in the amount of $552.50 for each for purchase of 81 2-cubic yard rear loading containers for a total of $44,752.50 for fiscal year 2018-2019, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee. Over the last 3 years, we've been replacing our metal dumpsters with these plastic dumpsters. We've had very good luck with them. They're lighter, easier for the guys to maneuver and load in the truck. And Rarick has provided what we've had so far. They're low bidder once again, and we've had no trouble with the carts. Warranties have been no issues. The only issues, we've had a couple that caught on fire, but that's apparently going to happen. But of all that are out there, it's only been twice. So, and that's from putting something on fire in the dumpster. But we're happy with the bid, and we recommend approval.
Any questions or a motion?
Motion for approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item approved. Number 6.
Consider approval of best bid from Rarick Pacific in the amount of $53.51 each for purchase of 1,429 residential refuse polycarts for a total of $76,465.79 for fiscal year 2018-2019, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley again.
Yeah, these are our residential polycarts. Every year we attempt to replenish our stock as they get damaged, lost, stolen, whatever. But so we keep about 10% extra every year, and that seems to be working for us. Asked for 10 sent things out to 10 bidders, got 1 bid, which was Rarick, which is the company we've used before, so it works well for us. The bid is the exact same price as last year, so we're comfortable with it, and we recommend approval.
This is if they get lost, stolen, or burnt out.
Or something.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Number 7.
Consider approval of lowest bid from RLC Controls Incorporated in the amount of $360,000 for wastewater treatment plant SCADA rehabilitation and improvements project, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee, this is basically the brains of the pollution plant, the computer system that runs the plant. It was installed in 1997, so if you know what a computer looked like in 1997, that's exactly what it looks like. Outdated, not supported, so this will put us up to date and with a whole new system that works. Currently, there are places where we're having to manually control things that would be automatically controlled, which causes more manpower. This is part of the OWRB loan. The bid is very good, much lower than estimated, but it is the company that installed it previously. We've checked references. They're a very reputable contractor, and we're comfortable with the bid, and we recommend approval.
Motion or second. Questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Number 8.
Consider approval of awarding a contract to the lowest bid, Tonto Environmental, for removal, hauling, and reuse of the residual solids at Muskogee Water Treatment Plant, Lagoon Number 1, in the amount of $49,460 as per bid prices, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee, this is basically the stuff in the lake that you don't want to drink. It settles out as part of the process and it's put in these ponds, and it's collected to the point that it needs to be removed. It's going to be removed to a place on the port property to fill an area that needs to be filled. We have good bid prices. We're happy with it, and we recommend approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson,
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 9.
Consider approval for a 2019 Muskogee Davis Regional Airport T-Hangar and ground lease rate step increase to ensure compliance with Federal Aviation Administration grant obligations and provide necessary revenue for airport operational and maintenance expenses effective February 1, 2019, as recommended by the Airport Board, or take other necessary action.
Well, I was supposed to say Mike Stewart, but I guess I'll let you have it, Drew.
All right, thank you, Dan. And good evening, Chairman and Committee. Happy New Year to you all. I'll give you a brief history on this. Airport T-hangar lease rates were last adjusted in 2005, and ground lease rates were last adjusted in 2001. Airport staff and the Airport Board has recommended a T-hangar and ground lease step rate increase, which implements fair and equitable lease rates as required by our Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Plan grant obligations. These lease rates will still keep us below the market average. We have done a rate review of all of the regional business airports that are comparable to ours in the state, and we are at the bottom of current rates. This will increase total ground lease rates, and this is all of them added together, by $839 per year, and this will increase T-hangar rates by $16,440 per year. We have quite a few more T-hangars than we do the private hangars. I recommend approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we still have a waiting list for T-hangars?
We do at this time. The ones that we have are individuals who either specifically want one of our newer hangars, which are in short supply, or they want to switch from a south-facing hangar to a north-facing hangar. Correction, from a north to a south-facing hangar.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Number 10.
Consider approval of a master agreement for professional services between Olson Incorporated and the City of Muskogee for airport engineering services at Muskogee Davis Regional Airport as recommended by the Airport Board, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Drew.
All right, so in order to qualify for our FAA AIP grants, we are required to have an airport engineer. We were with our previous engineers for 5 years. At the end of last year, we put a request for proposal out for a new airport engineer. We got 6 proposals. The Engineering Consultant Selection Committee recommended Olson unanimously. The Airport Board agreed with our decision. This master agreement, all it does is it outlines just the basic terms of the engineering services that they will provide. There's no fee associated with this agreement. If any fee-based concerns come up, it will be outlined in a work order that will require separate approval. This is the verbiage in this is very simple. It's easy to read, and I recommend approval of it.
Move for approval.
Second.
Before I make a roll call here, Drew, I'd like to tell you openly, thank you for all the work you do out the airport. It looks fabulous. If you have not been out there, y'all might want to drive out there and look at it. If you have one of those electric cars, you might want to go out there and plug it in. I'm telling you, for a small airport and a small community, it's just a beautiful place. It's a great airport. You should try flying in if you have an airplane.
Thank you, Dan.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Number 11.
Consider approval of master agreement work order number 1 between Olson Incorporated and the City of Muskogee for professional engineering services to design the runway 13-31 lighting rehabilitation AIP project number 3-40-0062-013-2019 is recommended by the Airport Board or take other necessary action.
Drew?
So this is the first task we have for our new engineers. This agenda item, of course, is dependent on the previous agenda item passing. Our runway 1331 primary runway lighting is in poor condition. It has not been updated since the 1980s. There are several other electrical concerns that we have at the airport that need money invested in them. This is a design agreement, so this is design only, no construction. The total is $104,000. It will be funded using AIP grant funds, which we will share at 10%, so that's approximately $14,000 out of our capital improvement funds. This project will replace runway 1331 lighting with full LED, install new airfield guidance signs, LED as well. Potentially install, if grant funds allow for it, an omnidirectional approach lighting system, which is the running rabbit approach lights you see at larger airports, along with several other improvements. A separate agreement will be needed for the construction phase of this project. I recommend approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Before you run away tonight, have you guys had any discussions or thought on building some of the new airplane stalls that were in high demand?
The T hangars.
Yes, sir.
Yes. If you look at the FAA's forecast for the next 20, 30 years, actually, yeah, the next 20 years, they actually foresee a decrease in active general aviation aircraft. Active general aviation small light aircraft, which utilize those T hangars. So while we are at full capacity right now, and we may still build some new ones, it's not something we can get funding for, so it's not a grant funding for, so it's not at the top of our priority list. And we may see a decrease with the aging pilot population as forecast.
Monitoring the trends.
Yes. At the same time, we are seeing a increase in turbine aircraft. So what we're looking at right now is potentially building a commercial hangar that would have the space for larger aircraft.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Councilman Kell, I've been on him since I got on the airport board, that we need to have those, like those 200 by 200 square foot hangars that they could pull one in case it's weather or something, rent them out as they pull in or something. I was trying to get him to do one of those, but he keeps telling me I got to hold off.
Well, like you said earlier, Dan, for a small community, that's an awesome airport, and it's a beautiful facility. So
I just can't wait to see what the next steps are that we put in place to make it bigger and nicer. It's just a great place for our community to have an airport that looks like that. With that being said, do I need a motion and a second?
I move the approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kell?
yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Thank you, Drew. I'm done. We can adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Now call to order the Public Works Committee of January the 7th, 2019. Item number 1.
Consider approval of Public Works Committee minutes of December 3rd, 2018.
Everybody's had time to review the minutes. Do I have a motion?
We move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kell?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Item number 1 passes. Item number 2.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of ordinance number 4059A, rezoning the 4.22 acres located within the northeast corner of Shawnee and Highway 69 more particularly described in the ordinance, from the R1 Single Family Residential District to the C3 Regional Commercial District, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant is requesting approval to rezone 4.22 acres from the R1 Single Family Residential District to the C3 Regional Commercial District. The property is located on the southeast corner. I think the agenda item says northeast, but it's the southeast corner of 32nd and Shawnee Avenue. The reason for rezoning the property is to allow for the property to be developed commercially. Looking at the existing zoning land use, starting with the site. Currently, the site is zoned R1, single family, and is undeveloped property. To the north, which is across Shawnee Avenue, is zoned C2, general commercial, and is also undeveloped property. To the south, across Military Boulevard, is zoned C3, regional commercial, and it is Triad Eye Clinic. To the east is zoned C3, regional commercial, and you have University Heights Shopping Center and Comfort Inn. And to the west, which is across 32nd Street, is zoned C1, local commercial, and is Quick Trip. If you look at the land use map, it does indicate regional commercial along both Shawnee Avenue corridor and 32nd Street corridor. Therefore, this request complies with the land use map and comprehensive plan adopted by the City of Muskogee. This item has been recommended for approval by staff and Planning Commission. Be glad to answer any questions.
We've now heard an explanation from Mr. Garvin. I will now open a public hearing on this item. Questions from council and from committee members on this item? We do not have anybody signed up to address this item, so I will close the public hearing.
Move for approval.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? Any other questions from Mr. Garvin? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes?
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 2 passes. Item number 3.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of ordinance number 4060A, rezoning the property located at 4 East Shawnee, more particularly described in the ordinance, from C1 local commercial and C2 general commercial to C3 regional commercial district, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
Thank you. We will go ahead and open a public hearing on this item. Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant is requesting to rezone 5.2 acres from the C1 local commercial district and the C2 general commercial district to the C3 regional commercial district. The property is located at 4 East Shawnee Avenue. It's the old Kmart building that was recently purchased by U-Haul. The reason for rezoning the property is to allow the entire parcel to be used for moving and storage facilities. Currently, they are leasing the vehicles. Now they want to move into the storage part inside the old building. Looking at the existing zoning land use, the site is zoned C1 and C2, and again, it's the old Kmart building, U-Haul. North of the site is zoned C2, general commercial, and you got air gas. South of the site, which is across Shawnee, is zoned C2 general commercial and C3 regional commercial. And you got Phillips 66 convenience store and fast lube. To the east is zoned light industrial, and it's Orsling's Farm and Ranch. And to the west is also zoned light industrial, and you got KFC and Premier Pediatric Care. If you look at the land use map, as I stated before, the Shawnee corridor is a regional commercial corridor, so this request does comply with the land use map. Staff and Planning Commission has recommended approval. I will also add that Planning Commission asked me to speak to the applicant. The remaining portion of the Kmart building is zoned light industrial, and they wanted to see if the applicant would be willing to downzone it to the C3 to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. It's not a requirement, but just a friendly request to see if they'll downzone that. And I told them I would forward that to the applicant. But they did recommend approval of this rezoning. Glad to answer any questions.
Okay. We've had nobody sign up to address this item from the public, so we will close the public hearing at this time. Are there any questions from the committee?
Mr. Garvin,
Yes, sir.
why are they only doing part of the building?
or the rezoning part of it, because half of it's already zoned light industrial, which is an appropriate classification for the storage. So it's
Okay.
not a requirement. And that's why planning commissions thought they would want them to go ahead and see if they'd be willing to go ahead and downzone it to the C3. Either one will work for their use. Typically with the industrial storage, you can have storage outside, like the boats and the RVs. The C3, it's basically all indoors.
Will they be able to store those vehicles out in the front of the building?
That's for the rental service, and yes, it is appropriate within the C3 for what they're doing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, this morning, this is a reasonable request, and I would have been tempted to deny it and ask the applicant to consider zoning the whole parcel. They need to get started on this, and that process would take another month. So I think it would have been a tad bit unreasonable to delay the work that these people in business need to get done. So I asked Mr. Garvin if he could make a friendly request, letting them know that we went ahead and approved it, realizing that they had to move forward on this, and they were ready to move forward now, but to see if they wouldn't consider zoning it all together so it would be a nice, tidy package for us and them.
The only question I really had about it, I like it being used, that empty building. I just was kind of concerned about boats and trailers and everything else being, if it was going to be all stored out in the front in the parking lot area. That's what I was curious, because then you're taking Orscheln's, which is a commercial, a store, and then they're going to gate that off, I guess, and fence it off and
Now-
store stuff in it, or?
Which the vehicles that they rent will be parked out front.
Okay, that's
And
fine.
that is what, that's part of the rental business. Now, under the part that's zoned light industrial, at some point in time, they could, if it stays light industrial, they could then fence off an area for the RVs and boats for people. I don't think that is their intent. I think if they see a need, it's a possibility that it's something they would do, but I don't believe that is their intent. Most of their intent right now is indoor storage inside the building.
Okay, because this is my view, and so I don't look like I'm being mean to them. I know if we just spent millions and millions of dollars down Shawnee Bypass, just like 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away, and I'm just thinking of the way it looks down there. It's kind of rough anyway, and anything in there would look nice. It's just that I'm trying to make future businesses wanting to be building there. Do you want to be across from a place where old boats and trailers and everything else are parked out in the front? The U-Haul's not a bad looking thing, but I just want to make sure that aesthetically we have something in place that tells them you can't have old broken down boats and stuff stored behind a fence out in the middle of a parking lot, and where we're trying to do an urban renewal area or a TIF district or anything else and try to build up that corridor that possibly makes us take 10 steps back.
Yes, and they do own property back behind the facility, and I would, and of course, there's no guarantees, but I would assume they would feel the same as you. They would want the any boats and RV, if they decide to go there, which I don't think they're going to, but if they decide to do something like that, I'm assuming they would want to send them around back also. But again, Commissioner Kale has we asked them to see about going ahead and downzone it. If they downzone to the C3, then they wouldn't have to have it, wouldn't be allowed any outside storage. So that's a request we'll make. It is not a requirement. It is a request, though.
And as far as the Planning Commission, I don't think that this is a worthy request to delay them for a month, and I don't want to delay them for a month. But I think it would be a nice courtesy from them, knowing that we chose not to delay them a month and request that. So
I don't want to delay them a month. I'd like to delay them a week to see if they'll make sure that doesn't happen. I mean, it's still going to wait till next week anyway, so I'd like to see if that's not going to happen. I'd like to make sure that that's not going to be those boats and RVs and old cars and stuff stacked up out in the front parking lot are going to happen.
And again, the conversation I had, and Mr. Smith actually is here. He represents U-Haul. So he would be the applicant, so I don't think he would need to sign up if you want him to come up and kind of state. I think what the impression I got was somewhere down the road, if they saw a need for outside storage, they would consider it, but you might talk to him and see if he's talking about back behind the property, or even if that's
I would love for him to
option in
come
the
up and
future.
talk to us and explain that. Like I said, my point is not to stop him, it's
Yes,
just to
Smith.
make sure that it doesn't.
Mr. Smith, we appreciate you coming. If you could give us your name and address for the record, please.
You bet. My name is Jim Smith. I'm with U-Haul Company. Address is 4E Shawnee Road here in Muskogee.
Thank you.
To address your specific question, there has been a thought for something in the future, and boat and RV, very nice covered boat and RV parking has been thought about. I can assure you that any of our facilities, I manage 13 of them myself, when we do have boat and RV parking, we don't let junk cars come in. We try to cater to the people with $300,000-$400,000 motorhomes with the $60,000 boats, and we don't allow someone with the clunker, someone sitting there with flat tires, into our facilities. Does that answer that question? It's not in the current plan, but it has been spoke about.
Well, like I said, I'm glad y'all are there. It looks nice to have someone in that facility, but I'm just thinking of future growth and everything and the way it looks, because you wouldn't want us to allow that to happen right next to your business
Well,
either.
I totally agree.
So
in
it's
that
just
regard.
a devil's advocate kind of thing, just making
Yes, sir.
sure that we have something in place that doesn't happen.
Yes,
One quick question. If you decided to go forward with something like that in the future, would you allow it in the front of the building, or would it all be back behind the building?
Well,
Or have you even thought about it?
nothing behind the building has even been considered. Behind the building, there's about a 40-foot, 40 or 50-foot strip
Not wide enough to
of
maneuver?
asphalt, correct.
Gotcha.
But that is something to consider, because we also own 10 acres of bare land back behind this facility as well. So that will be something that I will take absolutely into consideration and talk with the owners about doing that.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, if you would relay our good faith gesture this morning, it remains to be seen what we do this evening, to the owners, and let them know that we didn't want to delay them or hold them up. But if I was positive this was happening, I would probably delay them or hold them up.
I understand.
If you could kind of get, and good faith on their part would be zoning it all from my perspective. But
Understand.
if you were there this morning as well?
Yes, sir.
If you could share our concerns, because this morning we made a true good faith vote to approve, and it remains to be seen what we do tonight. But if
I
we do
realize
so-
that, and yes, sir, it will be communicated, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Item number 3 passes. Am I correct on that? Okay. Got a page. Item number 3 passes. Item number 4.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of ordinance number 4061A, rezoning the property located east of Highway 69 and Hancock Street, more particularly described in the ordinance from I-1 Light Industrial District to C2 General Commercial District, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
I will go ahead and call for the opening of a public hearing on this item. Mr. Garvin?
The applicant is requesting to downzone the property on North Hancock, East and South 32nd Street from the Light Industrial District to the C2 General Commercial District. The reason for the downzoning is to allow the property to be developed commercially. They are proposing an RV park on the property. Looking at the existing zoning land use, currently the site is zoned light industrial and is undeveloped property. To the north is zoned light industrial, and it's the Life Point Church. To the south is light industrial, and it is vacant, undeveloped property. To the east is Zone A agricultural and R1 single family, and you got vacant property and 4 single family dwellings. And to the west is Zone light industrial, and you got 2 hotels, Super 8 and American Best, and a restaurant, Catfish Ranch. Now, if you look at the land use map, it does indicate commercial along 32nd and also extending down Hancock at that intersection. The C2 request would comply with the comprehensive plan and land use map adopted by the city. The item was recommended for approval by staff and planning commission. Now, I will add, at our planning commission meeting, we did have 2 citizens show up who had questions and concerns about this development. And I tried to back up to the aerial map so I could show you where the church is located. The question that Mr. Martin, who lives down the road on past the church, had a question about that access road. There's an access road that comes off of Hancock. Wanted to know if it was going to be extended all the way and across the church property, which we stated that if that was to occur, the church would have to dedicate right away and the church would have to install it. We don't see that happening. Now, at subdivision committee, whenever they plat this property before they can get a building permit, subdivision may want them to extend the access road from the hotel to their property line, but that would be as far as they would go. I'm assuming they will make a request to get direct access onto 32nd Street also, possibly. But that would be determined at the subdivision meeting. But as far as the church is concerned, they would not be using the church property to get access to it. The other question we had was from the property owner, at least in one of the 4 houses back to the rear. His concern, his name was Gary Hall, his concern was property values, what impact it would have. What we tried to explain to him is that currently the property is zoned light industrial. So right now, you could have an industrial company come in, take out a building permit, and they could open up an operation, whether it be a trucking company or a company that causes noise, odor, which would have a much greater impact on his residential property than the RV park would. The other concern we had is when you look at the zoning, when you zone it, in this case to the C2, any use allowed in the C2 is allowed on this property. So yes, they are proposing an RV park, but other uses are allowed. If this was denied, say 2 months from now, someone wanted to build a hotel there, well, they need a C2 zone. You can't very well say now the C2 zone is okay. So there was a lot of discussion. We have new members on planning commissions, why we had a lot of these discussions too. But in this case, it does comply with the land use map, planning commission, and staff's both recommended approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Hall, I have a question. Slightly different than the map that you have up here, the one that we have in our packet.
Mm-hmm.
Shows a white piece of property going off to the north.
Some type
You know
of
what that-
easement that was through there, and I don't
Yeah.
know why it was shown like that, but there's some type of easement that comes through there.
So that land would not be a part of the zoning?
If it's an easement, it's part of the zoning, but if it's an easement, it can't be built on or anything, if it is actually an easement.
Okay. It appeared to separate the 2 parcels.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Garvin, on an RV park, what is how many can you get per acre? Is there a guideline on that, or?
Well, it would have to go through subdivision. They'd have to lay them out in the lots. They would have to have all concrete pads, individual pads for each one, individual water, sewer, electric hookups for each one. Everything, all the roads, and again, the pad would have to be hard surface. They would have a lot of requirements to go through the subdivision review committee that they'll have to make sure they comply with. One of the questions was even a privacy fence. Well, this is considered a commercial use. So yes, it would also have to have a privacy fence where it abuts residential to the backside of the property. But it's hard to say. It depends on the size pad they want, what size.
There's just so many variables.
There
It's
is
just,
a lot.
there is no defined.
Yeah, there is no certain amount per acre. But again, they would have to meet all of our requirements with access and pads and utility hookups. And with subdivision, it goes out to all utilities, so everybody would be looking at it at that point.
And
Gas,
each park
electric,
is laid
telephone.
out so much different depending on what clientele they cater to, and
Yes. And it's my understanding they plan on the higher end, large motor homes, RVs, is what my understanding was from this morning's meeting.
okay, thank you. Any other questions from?
May I be recognized, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's down the street by on Border and 32nd Street. Isn't that an RV park?
Yes.
So it's going to be any different than this? Just down there?
From the information I got this morning, it will be quite a bit different from that one.
In what ways?
Well, they talked about having kind of a guest center at the entrance, having the entrance coming off of 32nd, all the RVs being to the back. But again, everything hard surface, everything concrete pads, all the hookups, including cable and everything at that location. They just talked about it being a much nicer, more landscaped facility. Now, again, there's no guarantees.
So this
Because
will
again,
be,
what you got to look at, though, is the C2 zoning, and if this is a proper location for the C2. Because the RV park is allowed within the C2, so either it's an appropriate zoning within the C2 or it's not.
but the proposal to this one is a much nicer RV park.
From the information we got this morning from discussion, they were planning on having a very nice RV park.
Okay.
They think the cost will keep some of the others from coming in there, probably from what they'll be charging for their rental spots.
Okay. I turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from council? I will now go ahead and close. We have nobody signed up to speak to this item, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston,
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
I might at the very least have a perceived interest in this development, and at the very most have an interest in this development, so I'm going to abstain.
Marlon Coleman,
Yes.
Wayne Johnson,
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Dan Hall,
Yes.
Jamie Stout, Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item passes. Item number 5.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of ordinance number 4062A, rezoning the property located at 908 Honor Heights Drive, more particularly described in the ordinance from R1 Single Family Residential District to R4 Multifamily Residential District, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
Okay, we will now go ahead and open this up as a public hearing and also let the committee know that we have 2 people signed up to address this item. Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant is requesting approval to rezone 19,103 square feet from the R1 Single Family Residential District to the R4 Multifamily Residential. The property is located at 908 Honor Heights Drive. The reason for the rezoning is they're trying to sell the property and allow it to be occupied as an apartment. Previously, it had a non-conforming use. It's my understanding around 1945 when this structure was built, it was a sixplex. At that time, it was the nurses who worked at the VA typically lived in the apartment. However, the property's been vacant now for several years, and now that it's vacant, it's lost its non-conforming use, and in order to move forward, it needs to be zoned for multifamily. Now, looking at the existing zoning land use, the site is currently zoned R1 Single Family, and it's a vacant multifamily dwelling. To the north is zoned C1 Local Commercial, and it's a parking lot for the Veterans Administration Hospital. To the south is zoned R1 Single Family and a single family dwelling. To the east is 40th Street, and it drops off the hill there, the backside of the property, which is kind of undevelopable property. To the west, across Honor Heights Drive, is also zoned R1 Single Family and some single family dwellings. Now, if you look at the land use map does indicate single-family residential within this area. Therefore, this request does not comply with the land use map or comprehensive plan adopted by the city. Both staff and planning commission has recommended denial. Now, I know the applicant is present, and I think he would also like to address the commission in addition to the 2 that signed up.
Okay. Like to go ahead and hear from those that are signed up. First signed up is Ryan Eller. If you would give us your name and address, you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Absolutely. My name is Ryan Eller. My address is 4400 South 197th East Avenue. I live in Broken Arrow. My wife and I are interested in purchasing this property. We own several properties in the historic part of Muskogee. Our intentions with this property is to maintain it or update it to its original charm and its beauty. It is a 6-unit apartment. Downstairs has two-bedroom apartments, fully function once they're updated. The upstairs has 4 studio apartments. The exterior of the property is in pretty good shape. Needs to be updated, and the grounds needs to be taken care of. There are 5 covered parking spots in the back of the property, and everything to the to the east of the property is a asphalt parking lot. By our best estimation, it could probably fit about 10 to 12 cars. I do not know the specifics of that. It is an estimation. Our goal is to make it really, really nice. We want it for traveling professionals, for government contractors, for individuals who are visiting family in long-term care at one of our hospitals. The goal is for it to be partially or fully furnished apartments so that individuals could come. Because of that, it would be higher rent than what is average in Muskogee. It also would have higher stipulations for the tenants to abide by. And our goal is to match the charm of the community and make it fit right in with what Honor Heights is known for and how beautiful that community is. I'm welcome to any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. In this portion, we can ask them questions. We would have 5 minutes to ask them questions back if there was questions from the committee. Was there any questions from the committee regarding this applicant?
I might say he spoke in front of us this morning, and we did have a couple of folks with real estate experience on the committee, which was nice. I'm torn. I think this young man has done some nice rehabs here in town, and I think that if he does what he says, and I naturally assume that he would or will, it all makes great sense. His concept, the vicinity to the hospital, and taking a dilapidated building with a nice solid skeleton on it, a beautiful outside, and cleaning it up on the inside would be a wonderful thing. And I commend him for the concept and the idea and wanting to put in the money and the effort. On so many of these things, I've kind of drawn a line the best I can on spot zoning, and also kind of drawn a line that when these grandfather clauses get lost through lack of ownership or what have you, that's the time to nip some of these things in the bud. So I'll leave you with this. I think you're a credible guy. I think it's a great idea, your concept. I think it's well thought out, and I think if you put the kind of money in it that you're talking about putting in it, it's going to be a class act facility, which makes votes like this so hard for me, because you're torn between cleaning up an area and having a great concept, or going against the grain on spot zoning and kind of going backwards in spots. And I'm sure that it in some ways that needs to be done here or there. And I'll leave the members on this committee to decide what their thoughts are on that. But this was a tough one for me because I think he's got something going here. The spot zoning makes me nervous, and when we have something that's ungrandfathered, I kind of want to take advantage of that ungrandfathered.
Other committee members have questions?
I think my question is more towards Mr. Garvin. You said at one time it was basically commercial zoned for the...
It was never commercial zoned. It had a legal non-conforming use. It's always been zoned, since it's been inside the city limits, as single family. But evidently the apartments was there prior to it being annexed into the city. So that's how it got its non-conforming use. And it's my understanding it was occupied up until 8-9 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
I will add too, I see Mr. Martin back here. He also attended the meeting, and he spoke. He has some property within the neighborhood, and he is opposed to the request. I don't know if he got here in time to sign up, but I will let you know that he did attend this morning and he was opposed to the request. But basically, it's a non-conforming use at this point. Since it's been vacant, that's how they lose. If it's vacant for more than 90 days, you lose your non-conforming use. Then you have to comply with the current zoning regulations. In this case, being single family, it either have to be converted into a single family dwelling or get the property zoned for the sixplex.
Or they'd have to completely gut it out and make it a single-family living, which takes away the historic part of it for why it was built in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I see your point. It's kind of hard.
It's real hard.
The
And
thing has been sitting for 10 years, isn't it? Vacant?
And in Planning Commission this morning, I told Councilman Kell and the other commissioners there, this was a difficult one for me too. What I don't like about it, it's next to a C1. That C1 should have never, the property should have never been zoned C1, because that is spot zoning. It should have been probably zoned public property, especially since the VA is using it for their parking lot. So I don't know if it was a private parking lot before or how it come about. But typically, when you look at that, you have a commercial zoning, residential, you usually have the R4 apartment type zoning as a transition between the two, because that's how you transition down. So if you look at that, it fits, but again, you've got a spot zoning there that's C1, so do you just add to that spot zoning, or do you stop it at this point? So I keep referring back to the land use map, and the land use map does show single family. That's why my recommendation was denial, and I think that's why Planning Commission went with the recommendation to deny this morning.
and I might say, if there is a spot zoning issue, some of the issues we've had where we want a spot zone commercial right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, well, that's, for me, that's pretty easy. To do spot zoning when it's really going from C, commercial to residential, with the facts that this property's probably gonna have to be torn down if it's not kind of utilized how it's set up. So there's some good common sense reasons to consider this request. Because if there ever was a spot zoning that you could go, well, I'd consider this, this is one of those. It's not a zoning in the middle or on the edge, it's right there on the edge. So if there ever was an opportunity, this is it. Having said that, I'm good, bad, or indifferent, zero tolerance on spot zoning.
Well, and my deal is that it's been sitting there, like Mayor Coburn said, 8 to 9 years. And if this young man doesn't do something with it, then it could sit there another 8 or 9 years, and then we have an eyesore in probably one of our high traffic areas as far as going to the VA hospital.
I think we really don't have any questions for Mr. Eller at this point.
No, we're
so
just debating.
We'll go ahead, and thank you very much. We do have one more person signed up that had
Johnson,
signed up to speak.
Let me ask one or two more questions.
Okay.
Tell us about some of the other properties. I've driven by one that you did on 14th or 15th or
15th
something,
Street,
15th
yes.
Street.
So-
Tell us about the other properties
Absolutely.
that you've done so we know a little bit about your history.
Absolutely. So we bought the Blakemore Estate, which is a historic home on 15th between Martin Luther King and Emporia. It was in very, very bad shape when we purchased it, and the porch was about to fall off. And the inside, it had been vacant for about 15 years. My wife and I have intentions of living there and once we finish it, but we've been working on it for about 3 years. And all that's left is a kitchen and the front porch. We've invested a lot of money into it. It is a beautiful home. We also own one right across the street on 15th. We own one on Martin Luther King that we bought for $5,000 and appraised the other day for $85,000 after we finished working on it. And then I just purchased one last week on 17th Street, 17th and Court. And our goal for these is not to just get them and stick someone in them. Our goal is to make them beautiful again. I'm very passionate about the area. We went and looked at about 10 more homes today in that area as well that are in pretty bad shape. They're just beautiful homes that need someone to take care of them, love on them a little bit.
Are
And
you also involved in a commercial property redevelopment?
Yes. So for full disclosure, I purchased a property at 125 North Cherokee and Broadway with my business, and sold that business to my business partner. So he has now full ownership of it. But I did purchase that property with the intentions of making it into an office building, which he has now done. And so we started on that together, and he's finishing it for me. So yeah, we are fully invested in Muskogee.
And Mr. Kale and Mr. Hall, I think it's important to know that the integrity of the person is made. I realize zoning doesn't go with the person, it goes with the property. But I think it's significant when someone says, I've done these things. I've got history of changing old properties into usable properties again in making those spot zoning requests. So, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
And some of the things he talked about this morning, I think he's going to do what he says he's going to do. Obviously, with his history and background, I think he'll deliver. One last thing. You're from Broken Arrow, but are you a Muskogee boy?
I was born and raised, lived out, went to Hillsdale High School, went to college at NSU in Tahlequah. My parents, Richard and Susie Eller, lived here for a very long time. My grandparents still live in Oaktahaw. All my family, all the Ellers, if you know an Eller or someone whose last name was Eller, I'm related to all of them. So, yes.
Glad to see you holding on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Eller.
Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes, well, let me start the clock. Are you going to ask Mr. Eller questions?
I was just going to commend him.
Okay.
You know, I see you kind of go soft when I said, may I be recognized?
Yeah. Let's see if we need to start the clock
I
again.
think I helped the right as much as y'all to talk.
Yes.
Well, we were talking about people's experience.
I understand. What I'm saying is, I understand the spot zoning, what you're talking about, Mr. Garvin. But like I said, I commend you for coming to Muskogee and investing your money. And I think this is myself, personally, Mr. Kale. You know, we agree on things. Sometimes we don't agree on. But I think that it would be a good thing for this to be on Honor Heights Drive, because that's about zoning on some things is hurting us. That's just how I feel about it. You know, and the other councilors up here may not feel the same way, but I do. I think you do a great job, and I think that would add to that community, which is already a beautiful community.
Absolutely.
And we thank you, sir, for coming. And
Thank you for that.
spending your money here in Muskogee and
Thank you.
helping us out.
Appreciate that.
I have one question, Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
if that's okay. Mr. Eller, have you had any engagement with the hospital to the point that you may be considering a memorandum of understanding or something similar to validate them wanting to work with you to partner in terms of placing transient employees in your properties?
Great question. I have not. I have not approached the hospital, nor have I been approached by the hospital.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eller. Mr. Van, it was not that I was not wanting to recognize you. I was just want to make clarifications on the clock where I'm in compliance with the time frames of the rules of decorum. So it's not that, it's just we're getting close on our time. So just want to make sure we're in compliance with the 5-minute rule. We were getting really close. So I definitely want to make sure and recognize every council person up here. But it was kind of getting loose here, and I just want to make sure with the 5 minutes on and off, we were kind of getting around here. We do have one more person that had signed up to speak, Gina Jones, on this item, number 5.
Hi, my name's Gina Jones, and I live at 3700 Gibson here in Muskogee. I am Mr. Eller and Kristen, his wife's real estate agent. And I do have a few thoughts I would like to share with you guys, although I do feel like
Ms.
the
Jones,
majority.
one
Yes.
second. Can you give us your name and address? I'm sorry, I
I'm
didn't
fast.
clarify that.
Gina Jones, 3700 Gibson in Muskogee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. My notes that I have jotted down to share with you certainly have already been addressed, but I want to touch on them again. And while I appreciate and do recognize the land use map, just to reiterate that there is a commercial lot just to the north of the property. And I know that, there has been mention of maybe potentially tearing down the property if rather than having it sit there. And then when we look at the historical significance of the building, well, that's not really an option either. So then what we're left with is 2 options. We can either leave it as it is zoned currently, which is single-family residence, and just to be completely honest, in my opinion, it's just not a viable option. It would be a tremendous financial burden, if you will, if somebody thought of coming in and trying to, rebuild, remodel the property into making it a single residence. There's going to be limited buyers for that as an option. And so then if we look at it, well, that's probably not an option. Tearing it down's not an option. If we're interested in the historical significance, then a great way to go would be to rezone it so that it is a multifamily. I've worked with the Ellers. I've seen their properties. Like you said, we looked at 10 properties today, and they're all in really bad disrepair. And they do an amazing job. They are very interested in the community. They're very interested in renovating, and they're not just interested in it. That's what they've been doing, is renovating all of these properties and bringing them back to, if you want to, be a little cheesy, their original glory, their beauty, what they were. And I think that all of us would agree that whenever you've got a building that sits vacant, all buildings that are vacant or unoccupied tend to wear and tear much faster than a building that is occupied. So if we want to look at the significance of concerns of land value, if we're looking at or property value, I'm sorry, if we're looking at a building that's sitting vacant and has a little more wear and tear, I think that that's going to have more of a negative impact on the neighboring home values than a building that is an upscale property that's being beautifully maintained and renovated by the Ellers.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee to Ms. Jones?
I'll make another. May I be recognized, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make another point.
Do you have a question for Ms. Jones?
Not really, but I'm with you,
What
Ms.
I'd like to
Jones.
do is just see if we have questions for Ms. Jones, and then we can have discussion freely between ourselves. It'd be easier that way.
Yeah, I mean, we need to close the public hearing.
Yep,
don't we?
yep.
Good.
Thank you very much. I
Excellent.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will now go ahead and close the public hearing because we've had those that have signed up for the public hearing. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Now we can have freely discussion. Mr. Van.
It's like she was saying that, the property, it's historical. What gets me is we can drive through downtown Muskogee. We got the dilapidated buildings, casket company. Got a hotel that's this is no good. It looks bad for our community. But we reject a man that's because it's spot zoning that's trying to come here to Muskogee into order to fix something up on Honor Heights Drive. And he's proven what he can do. And that's what really gets me. You want people to come to Muskogee, to be in our Muskogee and be our citizens and work in our community and make our community vibrant and grow and stuff and make it look pretty. But we're trying to reject this gentleman because of just spot zoning. And we got a mess downtown. We drive through on Main Street every day. That just gets me. But I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman, because that's just how I feel.
Councilman Kell, since you sat on the committee of the planning and zoning, what was some of the other concerns that the committee may have had?
I'm telling you, they were conflicted. They were trying to abide by the strict land use map and by the current zoning and what have you. There was some people that spoke to 4 or 5 or 6 different people being over there, what have you, and probably like most people, just not for sure what's going on. Probably didn't know Mr. Eller's background and the things that he's done in this community. So naturally, people are nervous there all the way. But like myself, I think that a good part of the committee was torn and just trying to do right by rules. And I think that's part of that committee's job. That's part of staff's job. But that's why council can make different decisions. And that's why we're here, is to make those decisions. We want our subcommittees and our staff obeying with the rules that are set in front of them. And so they're mandated to do that. But we have the luxury of looking at things a little different and making our votes, the way we'd like to make them, or taking things into consideration a little differently, or sometimes we have different perspectives about the greater good or what have you, but they were torn. They were torn.
Well, and when I look at it, and I go up there because, you know, I guess I'm kind of an old softy when it comes to old parts of Muskogee and that area up there because, you know, I spent a lot of time up there as a kid living on the west side of town, trying to get my fat rear up the hill on my bicycle to go swimming on the other side. I don't know. But the deal is I remember those houses, and I remember the people that used to live in them. I remember the little cottages that they have now that are little offices down the side. And someone built that to be an apartment complex or in a duplex or something like that. And I'm finding it, my deal is that it was someone allowed that to happen before we got here. And I'm kind of trying to figure out how you tell someone no for something that someone else already previously gave them the right to do. And it's an old building, and and there's a lot of history and a lot of past in that building, and I just can't see not letting it be redone. That's my problem.
I don't think that's a problem.
And I'm one of those guys about spot zoning too. I just find it hard to do that, but at the same time, it's already been done. And because of it being empty or someone not wanting to process the zoning that was there when they built the apartments, I may be wrong, but I think that we should go ahead and do this. I think that we should allow it to be back an apartment complex and let them see what they can do with it, because I'd rather, Councilman Vance said it best, someone's coming into our community trying to do something nice for our community, trying to redo something that's getting derelict and getting ready to fall in. And, you know, someday I'm going to be old, and I hope someone comes help try to repair me a little bit. But at the same time, I would really like to see us move forward and rezone this.
I think why this was hard for the Planning Commission is this is a unique building. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, we have some historically significant buildings in our community, and I think that's why one of the reasons why Muskogee's blessed. I drive by. I don't know how long I've drove by this building, and it's very unique. But nobody's done anything with it, and the reason is you can't do anything with it because it's going to take a whole lot of money to do something with it, and it's going to be a single family, and you can't do that. This is a great idea, but unfortunately it's going to take something like this to do it, and we're going to have to be part of it. I think the other plan is us deny it, and it sits there and it dilapidates away, and we're going to be dealing with this again, and we're going to be demoing that building.
And you're exactly
and I think
right.
that would be a shame to lose another piece of our historical significance in this community by demoing something out. Now, if this was on down the hill a little bit, I'd feel a whole lot different about this. But when it's adjacent to the VA and it could actually serve the VA and add to our community, I feel the way it is. I don't like spot zoning. That is not what we want to do. I know that's what the Planning Commission don't want to continue down the same path, but this is why we're here, and it's to save a historical significant building in our community. So.
Well, you three gentlemen that have spoke up in favor, I agree with all of you 100%. And if there ever was a time to look at spot zoning differently, this is spot zoning that's actually not spot zoning. This is on the board. This is on the edge. Commercial next to it. I'm going to vote tonight, and I'm going to vote no. And I agree with everybody up here. And I hope this young man gets to do his dream. The reason I'm voting no is because I serve on another committee and took that no vote. If I had not served on that committee, I would probably vote yes tonight. Again, city staff and the planning and zoning have guidelines that they have to follow. If we've got staff making emotional decisions, that's not what we want them. If we got planning and zoning making decisions based upon emotion or logic or rationale, that's not what we want them doing. This body and city council can make those decisions. We can say, okay, here's what we're going to do and why and we're empowered to make those decisions. So I agree with every one of the gentlemen that spoke up and talked about the logical sense of it.
Item number 5, do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Excuse me, I need to say a few things. We've talked about spot zoning, and that's something that we want to do. Spot zoning is illegal in Oklahoma. So spot zoning is basic. Was this what you were going to say?
Well, yeah,
No,
but I
no.
wanted to clarify something too. I don't consider the R4 zoning being a spot zoning.
Right.
The spot zoning was the C1 local commercial. That was spot zoning because that's in the middle of a residential area. The R4 is still residential, so it's not considered spot zoning if you rezone it to R4. And I think the reason why Planning Commission was so conflicted is because I told them I had some conflicts here. If you go strictly by the book and look at the land use map, yes, it should be denied. But the other circumstances, you got an apartment complex that's been there for 40, 50, 60 years or longer. It's always been used as an apartment complex. It is next to a parking lot. It is next to the VA hospital. But again, the land use map does show everything single family. But Roy is correct. Spot zoning is illegal, but I don't consider this spot zoning.
We're going from single to multi.
We're going from single to multi. Now, some other questions that would come up in the meeting was parking. And I think the applicant's already addressed it. He felt like he could get 10 parking spots there. There is 4 studio apartments, 2 two-bedroom apartments. And when you look at the parking requirements, basically it's about 7 to 8 spaces that he'll be required. So if he can get 10, he'll meet those requirements. This is not your typical apartment development where you've got big structure being built. This is an existing building. It can't go any wider because of the setbacks. If you get beyond the parking in the backyard, it drops off. It's never going to change the footprint because there's not enough room. So what you have now is what you get. So with all that, it was a very difficult decision.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Of the city attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
How would we word a motion at this time to allow this gentleman to do what he's wanting to do?
What you would need to do is make the motion to approve and also condition that on a direction to staff to revise the land use map to conform with today's decision.
Well, that's what I want to do.
I second that.
So I have a motion and a second. Are there any clarifications needed? Or any questions?
Would you like me to restate the motion, or?
Please.
Okay. So the motion would be to approve the rezone for the property from R1 to R4, and further to direct staff to revise the land use map to conform with today's decision and bring that forward for action.
Yes, that's my motion.
Any questions from council?
I just think that'd be, Ms. Boyston, thank you. This is the right thing to do. Plus, it's to satisfy
I
this
say,
gentleman.
get after him.
Roll
Plus,
call.
you know, one more thing, Mr. Johnson. Plus, the VA, you know, they're our largest employer. And if I didn't misunderstand you, you said some of those people will be in those apartments. And that they do carry the city of Muskogee, the VA. That's one of them.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Jenny Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
No.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Item number 5 passes. Item number 6.
Consider approval of a preliminary and final replat of lots 1 through 49, lots 51 through 75, and a part of Lot 1 of Block 247, Reed subdivision in Muskogee Original Town Site into one lot, one block, containing 5.4 acres more or less, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the applicant Green Country Behavioral Health is requesting approval of a replat consisting of one lot on 5.4 acres. The property is located at 619 North Main Street. The reason for the replat is they plan on expanding their existing facility, also adding a parking lot and a storage area. And previously there was multiple lots, so they need to consolidate it by doing a replat so they can move forward with the addition in the parking lot. This item is being reviewed and recommended for approval by staff, Subdivision Review Committee, and Planning Commission. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Item number 6 passes. Item number 7.
Consider approval of updating the City of Muskogee Section 125 Plan Document to include a restated 502 Plan Document or take other necessary action.
Ms. Plunkett.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, our Section 125 plan allows our employees to contribute pre-tax dollars to various supplemental benefits, medical, dental, vision, things of that nature. The plan number 502 needs to be updated because right now it only allows for previous year's annual max. We need to increase that to the $2,700 pre-tax max for medical expenses. And we also have language added in there so we don't have to come to you every year to update this unless we have other plan changes, that it will also allow to the IRS max because it does usually increase every single year. I recommend approval and happy to answer any questions.
Any
Move for
questions?
approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions from committee? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item passes. Item number 8.
Consider approval of the appointment of Counselor Jamie Stout to the Chamber of Commerce Committee for Convention and Tourism, filling the unexpired term of Counselor Dan Hall, or take other necessary action.
Counselor Stout.
I had the appointment for this, and I'd like to fill this role and to serve on the Tourism Committee.
Move for approval.
Oh, yeah, second that. Thank you for taking that seat.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions from council? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
We have nobody else signed up to speak to the Public Works Committee, so that will conclude our meeting.
Now call to order the special call meeting of Muskogee City Council, January 7, 2019. Roll call.
Mayor Bob Coburn?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Here.
Dan Hall?
Here.
Marlon Coleman?
Here.
Jamie Stout?
Here.
Wayne Johnson?
Here.
Patrick Kale?
Here.
Ivory Van?
Here.
Derek Reed?
Item item 1, A and B.
Consider an executive session to discuss and take possible action on the following. A, pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss the lawsuits styled Darwin, England versus City of Muskogee, CJ-2007-20, Deary Vaughn versus City of Muskogee, CJ-2007-1371, and Elaine Taft versus City of Muskogee, CJ-2007-1410, filed in the District Court in and for Muskogee County, Oklahoma, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session. B, pursuant to Section 307B2, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss negotiations with the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 95, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session.
I'll now entertain a motion for executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any comment or question? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes, motion carries. We'll now consider ourselves in executive session. Convene from executive session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bob Coburn?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Janie Boydston?
Here.
Dan Hall?
Here.
Marlon Coleman?
Here.
Jamie Stout?
Here.
Wayne Johnson?
Here.
Patrick Kale?
Here.
Ivory Van?
Here.
Derek Reed?
Items 1A and B. Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, the City Council did convene an executive session to discuss the lawsuit styled Darwin, England versus City of Muskogee, CJ 2007-20, Deary Vaughn versus City of Muskogee, CJ 2007-1371, and Elaine Taft versus City of Muskogee, CJ 2007-1410, filed in the District Court in and for Muskogee County. After being briefed on the status of those ongoing lawsuits, I believe no action is necessary at this time. Item 1B, pursuant to Section 307B2, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, the council did convene an executive session to discuss ongoing negotiations with the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 95. After being briefed on the status of those negotiations and being notified of closure of them, I think an appropriate motion would be to approve a collective bargaining agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 95, and the City of Muskogee for fiscal year 2018-2019.
So moved.
Second. A motion and a second. Any comment or discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Jenny Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Hale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Jamie Stout?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes, motion carries, and that concludes our agenda for today. Thank you.